where I can see you. I'm over here with Paul Porter, and we're going to talk about an amazing antique radio and work on a turntable.
Yeah.
So this is that find of a radio.
This is 40 pounds of 1926.
It's a 1920s portable radio.
Portable radio.
Wow.
Yeah. This is what you would have carried as a portable radio in 1926 if you had money.
It's called a Portaradio.
A Portaradio. This is etched brass, very ornate. Has a little light to light the dial so you can see where you're tuning, which is kind of an elegant feature since you're running on batteries. Volume control, on-off switch, tuning, which is 0 to 100. There were no stations in those days. You were lucky to get a station at all. And this was a regenerative radio, basically a one-tube tuner where one tube does two things.
Well, you're sort of doing a feedback, and it causes increased amplification.
It's feedback just to the point prior to oscillation.
Now that was Armstrong's one of his first inventions.
Yes, and it's a spooky thing because you have to adjust his feedback control to just find that spot where you get the best volume, but it doesn't start whistling.
And you know, the regenerative, as I understand, when Armstrong found it, also it led the way into better transmitters.
It led to a lot of things, but the thing was that tubes were so expensive that you couldn't just add another tube to get more gain. You had to make the tube you had do the most work.
Yeah.
And regenerative could amplify and re-amplify and act as its own detector if it was biased correctly. This is one of the first radios to use a multi-grid tube. We'll show you that.
And now this is your antenna right here in the door.
And the antenna is in the door. It's a loop, which was unusual because in those days an antenna was usually 500 feet of wire strung between two trees.
Yeah, like a big old clothesline.
Built-in antenna. A tiny little built-in acoustic speaker, not like the speaker we know. It's like an earphone with a little box attached to it.
Now, was it was it magnetic or was it?
It's permanent magnet.
Permanent magnet.
But it's a cantilever mechanism, not a cone. Backside. These are the audio stages.
Those are triodes.
Detector and two audio stages. These are first generation vacuum tubes after the ones that Western Electric and God, where's the man's name? God, they invented the vacuum tube.
DeForest?
DeForest, yeah. These are the first commercially produced tubes. 1922 to about 1927 or 8. This tube was new at 26 and number 222. The first multi-grid tube for a battery set. Now there was a multi-grid tube for an AC powered radio, came out in 27. But multi-grid tube so it can be an oscillator, regenerative, and a detector at the same time. And components that consist of things like this. That's actually a resistor. There's a capacitor back there, tuning gang, there's the oscillator coil, transformer coupled audio.
That looks like awfully modern transformers there, actually.
Well, transformers haven't changed much over the century. But the most beautiful thing is that it's got the original batteries. 1.5 volt dry cells, 3 of them. 3 volt filaments, 2 batteries in series. This one probably is for bias and to run the dial light. And then 2 45 volt B batteries in series to make 90 volts for the plates. And these are sealed with what looks like sealing wax, which used to be used back in the old days to seal letters so that people couldn't tamper with your mail. Operating instructions in the lid. See? How to hook up the batteries, loudspeaker, and all the do's and don'ts, who made the radio, the tubes it uses. A lot of times when you bought a radio in the 20s, even into the 30s, the tubes did not come with the radio. You bought the radio, then you chose the tubes that you thought were best. And it gave you the best performance. You picked your own tubes. This one may have been exactly that you bought the tubes that you thought were the best. But there they are. And chances are this, let me see, this date stamped in these batteries, 1933. So this radio was used maybe 5 or 6 years before it was shelved.
How long do you think that one of that batteries is damaged there? That one, isn't it? Or?
Yeah, the acid is eating through the zinc.
Mm-hmm.
I haven't pulled these to look at them yet, but you know, people buy these batteries just for looks.
Mm-hmm.
They're a big old chunk of carbon with some zinc around the outside.
Mm-hmm.
But people buy them for the artwork. But this one, to have gone this long with the original battery still, I mean, that's 80 years these batteries have been in this box.
That's something. And that speaker is just going into that horn.
Yeah, it's a little tiny speaker into this little box for acoustic resonance amplification.
Mm-hmm.
So this thing produced maybe a 1/4 watt of audio.
Yeah.
Yeah, very little. But there's your UX199s, simple triodes, and your 222 multi-grid tube. And this would have been top of the line in 1926-27. According to the internet, the tube was introduced in 26. So the radio was probably sold in 26 to 27, but the reason I liked it is these tubes predate this tube. There were newer tubes on the market when this radio was made that would have looked like this. But this was manufactured with these 3 tubes.
What does it say on that tube there with that paper?
The Radio Supply Company, 1918 Mala Street, and my guess is it's got a phone number on it. I don't want to pull it out. Dallas, Texas. The radio shop on Mala Street in Dallas, Texas. We should Google that. Yeah. I hate to pull these, but let's see.
Oh, be careful.
All right.
Oh.
Yeah, this tube was tested by us and found to be functional satisfactorily. It is guaranteed by the manufacturer solely blah, 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 blah.
Can we spin around and take a look at the interior?
And they wrote the tester info, I guess, on it. 304856 Radiotron UX199 RCA. Wish they put date codes on them, but they didn't in those days. A simple triode, very simple. But 1918 not Mala Street, Main Street, that's easier. Dallas, Texas, that's downtown.
No, that's that silver stuff, that's a getter, is it?
Yeah, it was the getter.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. Yeah, Mala Street. I gotta get my glasses checked. Main Street, 1918 Main Street. Downtown. The downtown would have been everything in Dallas in those days. We'll put this back in and turn it around. Yeah, you talk about simplicity. There's maybe 10 components in the whole radio. Because down here it's just coupling transformers, oscillator, a couple of mica caps. That's probably the grid leak resistor for the detector. Beautifully made tuning, gang.
Yeah, those variable caps. And you don't see those hardly anymore.
And it's a variable cap for your feedback. So you vary how much capacity to get your feedback going. And you find that sweet spot and you listen to Guy Lombardo or Rudy Valley or whoever. I like this because it says handle with care and fragile on top of the box. It ought to just say radio in huge letters.
You have any idea where this was made?
Yeah, in Boston, Massachusetts. I mean, the label inside tells you it was made. Beautiful, beautiful front.
And it's all there, actually.
It's all here. This has not been touched. Has not been touched. There's a little something loose under there, but look at this. Brass
rivets. It's got little rivets.
Little rivets and this brass screen to protect the speaker. And I'm sure the battery's got a little air through there too. But yeah, it's in beautiful shape. Beautiful shape. Still silk covered wire going to the antenna. And it tells you to aim the lid towards the station you want to receive. Yeah. So this would have been a huge thing in the 20s if you wanted to take radio with you.
Well, lots of times they give this as a present. I know that I've heard stories about people that used to teach at those one-room schoolhouses, and especially during Depression, they'd give a teacher a radio for the entire year's salary.
That would have been a huge, 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 huge gift. And of course, radio was seen as the greatest thing for education for many, many years. That you could transmit lessons by radio to children in far-off communities where there weren't schools. Never worked out too well, but boy, it was a big thing.
Well, they were talking about they gave the teacher a radio, and then everybody spent all the time at the teacher's house listening to the radio.
Yeah, well, remember, radio in those days would have cost this probably about $50. And multiply that times more than 10 by today's wage. What in 1926, it'd be times like 22 in terms of value of the dollar. So you're looking at thousands of dollars for this radio in today's money. So that would have been a big thing. Yes.
It's cost more than a car sometimes, right?
This would have, well, about half the cost of a car. A lot of money, because this was new technology. Those tubes had just been put on the market. So that was a big thing. But we found this on the internet at a price that we could afford and jumped on it. So I'm real pleased with that little acquisition.
That's exciting.
Yeah, yeah. Of course, now that can be done.
Yeah. Well, couldn't you take like modern batteries and just...
Yeah, you can take D cells in place of the dry cells. Won't last as long. And to get 90 volts, you need 10 9-volt transistor radio batteries. They used to be 69 cents a piece, which wouldn't be bad. They're now $2.50 a piece, so you pay a lot of money to get that 90 volts.
Yeah, and probably it'd run all of an hour, hour and a half.
And they won't run. They'll run about 10 hours because unless you buy really good 9 volts. Yeah, but it's doable. It's doable. But that's a piece of the past.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Okay.